There are a lot of line or ways to write an equation of a line, I should say. The one that we're going to spend the most time, that we're going to emphasize the most on, is going to be the slope-intercept form. Now, there are several others that we will mention, but this will be the one that we rely on the most. Obviously, if I'm going to have you graph a line, you could use a graphing calculator or Desmos to help you out. But as far as looking at an equation written in this form, y equals mx plus b, there's a lot that you can learn just from the information that will be presented to you. Now, right now, what you're looking at is this general formula. But when we're looking at it, there's two things that we want to pay attention to. The first thing is the slope, right? And the slope is represented by letter m. We've talked about slope last week earlier with the slope formula, finding the slope on a graph, finding the slope from 2 points, the same slope that we were talking about then. That's right there as letter m. That'll eventually be a number in one of these linear equations that we're talking about. The other number, the other piece of information that we're going to focus on here is b, which is known as the y-intercept. I circled b here, but I should actually include the sign in front of b. Now, this is the generic equation y equals mx plus b. When we're looking at actual lines, there will be numbers here for m, and there'll be numbers here for b. When it comes to b, we actually will want to pay attention to the sign as well. It's not always a plus. It could also be minus some number. But let's take a little bit closer look just to understand. You may have had experience with this, but let's just take a look. So here's a line. This gray line, this black line, grayish black line, is the line that, just like any other line that we've seen, right? If we wanted to dig a little deeper, we could look at slope. We've done slope before to find the slope of this line, which is, the slope is 1/2, but if you wanted to find it on your own, you could use any 2 points on that line and count your rise over run, and you'll find that that slope is positive 1/2. If that's all the information I told you, that I was thinking of a line that had a slope of positive 1/2, it could be that line. It could also be this red line. Though it isn't the exact same line, you can tell that it's very similar. In fact, it has this exact same slope, it's just moved up a little bit. It could be that blue line, or it could be this purple line. Every single one of these lines has a slope of positive 1/2. So if you're looking at that characteristic, that slope, if you know that value for m, it certainly helps to kind of think of what the line might look like. But it's not enough to narrow it down as to which specific line are we talking about here. So it's part of the picture. It's not everything you would need to narrow it down between which one of these lines are we talking about. There's a bunch of lines that have a slope of 1/2. Okay, so that brings us to the next part here, which is the y-intercept. Let's look at this line right here. And if we're looking for the y-intercept, just look at where on the, so this is the y-axis. Look on the y-axis and where it crosses the y-axis. This red line crosses the y-axis at 2. So this has what we call a y-intercept of 2. Now that's just the characteristic of that particular line. This green line also has a y-intercept of 2. It crosses the y-axis at 2. Same thing with this blue line, and same thing with this purple line. So if I were to tell you I was thinking of a line that was crossing the y-axis at 2, that has a y-intercept of 2, it could be any of these lines, and including a bunch of other lines that I have not shown you to you here, right? But it does narrow it down because we are looking for a line to be crossing this particular point. But just knowing that alone, just knowing your y-intercept isn't enough to determine which specific line we're talking about. So I don't know the identity or which line that we are specifically talking about by just knowing the y-intercept. So if I have both of those pieces of information, if you look at this linear equation up here, this is an example of an equation where this information is specifically given to you. So this is y equals 1/2 x plus 2. That 1/2, that number that's in front of the variable x, that is going to be your slope. And this 2, more specifically this positive 2, is your y-intercept. So I'm really looking for a line that has a slope of positive 1/2. So if I know that, I can actually get rid of any line on this graph that doesn't have a slope of positive 1/2. So this blue line right here, this has to go. So now all the lines that are left have a slope of positive 1/2. So now I'm going to look at my y-intercept. All of these lines have a slope of positive 1/2, but only one of them has a y-intercept of positive 2, right? This sign right here does matter. Positive 2. So now that I know that piece of information, I can get rid of the other lines that don't have a y-intercept of positive 2. So this equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 2, having both of those pieces of information, you are able to say with certainty that you are talking about this particular line. It's kind of like a fingerprint, right? If you can find out the slope in the y-intercept, you can eliminate every other line that exists and know specifically which line or which graph you're talking about, right? So that's what we're looking for this week, is being able to look at a graph and find the equation by, one, we got to find the slope of that line, and two, we have to see what the y-intercept is.